Welcome back to Turning Point tonight, where we are charting the course of America's cultural comeback. My name is Jobob. Thanks so much for sticking with us. Let's bring in Monica Page, Turning Point's White House correspondent, to talk about things going on in the day. Monica, there was just a press briefing that you came out of, a very brief press briefing, as you had put it. Can you tell us about it? What went on in the press briefing room?
Yeah, Joe Bob, great to be with you as always. Well, I think this may have gone down as the shortest press briefing, at least with me being here at the White House. I haven't seen a press briefing any shorter than this, but it was 22 minutes long. Caroline came out of the gates really looking to highlight some of the accomplishments that President Trump has under his belt: record investments, record job numbers, an explosion of jobs in the private sector, at least. Women's History Month being celebrated today, a surprise announcement about tariffs on automobiles that the president is speaking about today, 4 p.m. Eastern time. But a lot of the reporters in that room just wanted to keep talking about Signalgate. And that was really what dominated the entire briefing room. And it was just a bunch of different questions. Well, it was all the same question asked a bunch of different ways. And it was really frustrating for Caroline to try and articulate, anything more than what she could possibly say. And, she highlighted that President Trump stands by Mike Waltz. Mike Waltz took accountability for what had happened and, trying to kind of push the conversation in a different direction. I mean, I wanted to ask about the Tesla protests that we're going to be seeing this Saturday. It's supposed to be a nationwide protest. And I wanted to know what the administration's response would be to to some of the violence that's been incited. We've heard from Democrat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett saying all she wants for her birthday is an Elon Musk takedown. I would love to know what the White House thinks about this kind of rhetoric and what their message is to those who are thinking about inciting violence this weekend. So it's kind of frustrating, especially I can't imagine how she feels as well. But nonetheless, it was a very short briefing, and I know JD Vance is at Quantico today making some remarks as well. So she didn't want to counter program, but that's also why it ended very quickly.
No, I just since everybody is talking about the whole signal thing, and
Yeah.
the leaked. I don't even necessarily know if it's leaked necessarily because it happened kind of in real time. But
Mm.
there's a bunch of talk, especially in conservative media circles, about okay, well. Remember when you had mentioned 13 U.S. service members were killed in Afghanistan and nobody was held accountable for that? This
Oh.
is a successful operation. There's also Hillary Clinton's private email server that was also the talk of the town when it came to, well, is this secure and all that sort of stuff. Now, a bunch of people, call conservatives, well, this is whataboutism, which the
Mhm.
clear and obvious answer is, well, you mean consistency? Like that's like a thing that we need to have. I don't understand that term, but I guess overall, how do you see this story going if nothing really changes from the administration? Is it going to continue to, is the story growing or is it shrinking? I guess is my question in your opinion.
That's a great question, Joe Bob. From this perspective here from the White House, I can really see this staying stagnant as of right now.
Mm,
And I think that the White House's solution to this has been what it has been doing for the past 2.5 months, which is just keep securing wins from this White House, whether that's jobs, whether that's border, whether that's mass deportations, whether that's, just big wins for the economy, women's big wins in the women's sector as well. I mean, obviously this White House honoring Women's History Month today. And I can see that definitely trying to kind of overshadow this news cycle. If anything, I think we'll get more answers at the end of the day. But you raise a lot of good points. I mean, where was the media outrage? Where were the questions in the briefing room when, 13 service members were killed in Biden's botched Afghanistan withdrawal? Where was the outrage when Benghazi happened? Nobody was held accountable for that. So there's a list of things that, this media sphere here at the White House is really just missing the mark on. And I think it's important to note that this administration has been very consistent in what it's been doing. And if anything, you take a look at what the Atlantic posted, they said, or that, what's his name, Goldberg said, oh, these were war plans, but then changed its rhetoric to attack plans. So it's
mm.
playing this word game here as well, which I also think is important to note that, it's just trying to make this administration look bad. But at the end of the day, you see what this White House has been doing, you're seeing what's coming out of it. I think at the end of the day, the American people should know that this has been the most transparent White House in history, and we can obviously see that. But as far as, whether this is going to be a story by next week, I don't know. It's going to be tough to tell.
Yeah, it feels like this is not necessarily condoning any sort of negligence on the administration side, but at the same time, it's difficult for the libs when there's been no consistency when the shoe is on the other foot. Monica Page, Turning Point's White House correspondent, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Let's bring our panel back in to discuss something that I I've never thought I'd see the day where libs in the state of California are pushing for decreasing taxes. Ivy Van Dusen, Chris Hand is here to comment on this. So Ivy, let's start with you. The story here is that, well, the fact that California legalized marijuana, and I use air quotes there because still federally not okay. The fact that California legalized marijuana, they now have figured out that, well, because the taxes are so high, 40% when you factor in all of the taxes in some places, now they're saying, well, it's promoting the underground marijuana market. How ironic is it, Ivy, that it appears that libs have, according to the Wall Street Journal, found the Laffer curve by accident?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think that it goes to show a lot that they finally are starting to understand economic policy and the consequences of economic policy when it comes to their favorite vices. That's when they'll really start to understand and
Mm.
really start to learn when it's something that's really important to them. Not when it's small businesses. I wish they treated small business owners the way they would treat drug dealers or people involved in this and you know
Yeah, I'm surprised they're not lobbying for weed to be included in SNAP, given the fact that the other things that they allow that those food stamps to buy. Chris, your thoughts on California libs finally saying, yeah, we got to lower the taxes here because people aren't buying it and they're turning to the illegal markets.
Yeah, I mean, I have many thoughts on this issue. First, taxes are bad now. Oh, all right, cool. Welcome to the club. We'll take you in here. That's fine.
Yeah.
My initial thought is, wasn't the main argument for legalizing marijuana the tax revenue that the local governments and the state governments could get off the marijuana? So you're now arguing against the argument that was for legalization in the first place. My second thought is the street dealers are cutting in on your business. If you enforce the laws at the local level in some of these states, you wouldn't have to worry about it in the first place, right? Like if you had police allowed to do their job, well, then that issue would be solved. And then my third thought is, how come they don't have this problem with moonshine bootleggers in California? It's just weed dealers. How does the alcohol industry deal with this issue that the marijuana industry can't in the same way? There's many different avenues that we could go down with this issue. But California not liking taxes, I don't want to bang on them too hard. You know what I mean? Like, hey, come on, taxes are bad. Let's explain everything else to you guys too.
Yeah, hey, Chris, the sane speak like that is not welcome here in California. We specifically go for insanity, but I love that point about the whole taxes. Yeah, the whole thing was, oh, look at this, we should make it legal because we're going to benefit from the tax revenue.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden there's too much, well, there's not too much tax revenue. The taxes are impeding the legal sellers and people are turning elsewhere, which then you go, okay, well, they wouldn't be able to if you enforced the freaking law in your state. A lot of great points, Chris.
Amen.
Really appreciate your insight there. I would love to get your insight on Lee Zeldin, the head of the EPA, rolling back a lot of the restrictions. EPA stands for Environment Protection Agency, which Charlie Kirk says, well, the Employment Prevention Agency is also what it could stand for, because they have been pointing to things like the 2009 endangerment finding that refers to a bunch of the different EPA findings regarding clean air. That has obviously led to a huge amount of restrictions and red tape for U.S. companies all over the place, which obviously limit and impede employers from hiring people to do jobs that the company would like to hire people to do jobs for, including doling out a bunch of money. There was a story a couple weeks ago that an NGO, a nonprofit that was involved with Stacey Abrams, got $2 billion from the Biden administration after having only received $100 the year prior to that. Basically, Lee Zeldin is saying, hey, we're kind of doing what Doge is doing, where we're cleaning up a bunch of the waste, but we're also going to eliminate a bunch of red tape. How welcome of an operation do you think that'll be for the American people, Chris?
I mean, I guess it depends on what side of the aisle you're on, right? Like the leftists will
Yeah.
have an absolute hissy fit over it, and conservatives will say promises made, promises kept. But I mean, the reality of it is, this is what we campaigned on: less regulation, less government oversight, less government overreach, and that's what Lee Zeldin is doing at the EPA. Every time the topic of climate change comes up, you could just point to two countries, India and China, and say, what about them? And why are we limiting our country when we're actually doing a pretty good job. I don't know if you've looked around lately, but Los Angeles is actually pretty nice. We don't have the smog that they had back in the days.
Mhm.
And I say pretty nice. Ignore the poop on the streets and the
Yeah.
needles. But if you look up, it's not as bad as it once was. And you can point to so many different areas and say the exact same thing, whether it's in Appalachia or Los Angeles. Promises made, promises kept. We got to rein in some of this regulation, and that's what Lee Zeldin is doing, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think a big thing with conservatives too, myself in a huge part, is I don't hate the environment. I love the environment. I would like to keep the environment as clean as possible, but the problem is the EPA is not actually doing that. Instead, they're doling out money. Ivy, is that true on your end? Because conservatives like the environment. We want to conserve the environment, but the EPA just hasn't been doing that. That's not the lane that they've picked. Instead, they're just doling out money. And I don't know. Do you think the American people are going to accept reining that stuff in?
Well, like Chris said, it depends what side of the aisle you're on. If you're a team, just throw money at it, and then we can check that off the list. As long as we throw money and call it environmental protection, then I'm doing my job. So people who are for that are going to be upset by this, but I love what he's doing. I think that cleaning it up and just cutting all the waste and stopping the pretending of, well, this is going to the environment. That's not what's going on. You look into each of these bills and how much money and where the money is actually going and how much of it is actually going to the environment. It's not what you think. Again, it is just like Planned Parenthood. It's like NPR. You need to dig in deeper. It isn't just what they're saying. And so I think he's doing a good job of digging deeper, cleaning it up. And that is exactly what a lot of us voted for.
Yeah, I will say I personally love the fact that they're gutting the EPA and not doling out free money. But there is a small part of me that if a lib president gets back into power and the EPA starts doling out money again, I may want to start Jobob's clean air facility, in which I bill the government $1 billion to clean up the air inside my studio.
Count me in. I want in on that.
Yeah. I'll send him an invoice. Ivy Van Dusen and Chris Hand, thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate the insight and the commentary.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Coming up next on Turning Point tonight, we've got an amazing clip from Alex Clark's Culture Apothecary podcast. You're not going to want to miss it. And also, segment after that, we're going to read some emails, have some fun, look at some Instagram reels, TikToks, whatever you want to call it. Don't go away. All that and more coming up next. We'll be right back.